Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. Thanksgiving can often be an incredible day for backup quarterbacks. In the blink of an eye, in front of a national television audience, you can go from the second stringer to a household name that is remembered until the end of time. You've got tons of moments where backup quarterbacks come off the bench and perform in the line of duty on Turkey Day. Jason Garrett somehow winning on Thanksgiving in 1994 against the Green Bay Packers. Clint Longley coming off of the bench in 1974 and erasing a 13-point deficit in the second half against Washington to win the game with 2 touchdown passes. Vinny Testaverde coming off of the bench in 2004 against the Chicago Bears and erasing the damage done by Drew Henson to win the game in the second half thanks to 14 points in the final quarter of play, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. You get the idea. There are plenty of backup quarterbacks who rise to the occasion on Thanksgiving when called upon and deliver an iconic performance that lives on forever in NFL history. And this man right here absolutely could have done it. This man that you're watching is Green Bay Packers quarterback Don Horn. And in 1970, during a Thanksgiving game against the Dallas Cowboys, in front of the entire nation, he was tasked with every backup quarterback's dream. Go out there and win the game for us. Show yourself on national TV and lead us to victory. And look, if he succeeded, it would be a cool story. If he failed, it wouldn't really be a story, as plenty of quarterbacks fail to do that. But what Don Horn did deserves to be remembered more than half a century later, because he had one of the most bizarre games and performances by any quarterback in Thanksgiving history, all without ever playing a snap. Because on Thanksgiving in 1970, Don Horn's final memory as a Green Bay Packer and his final moment with the team would be something absolutely insane that just about sums up what a lot of life was like in the post-Vince Lombardi years for the Packers. Because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, the craziest injury in Thanksgiving history. Before I talk about the actual incident in question and what exactly happened to Don Horn, the main subject of our story, we need some context to understand how the game was going, as well as why Horn was even supposed to be coming off of the bench in the first place. It's November 26, 1970. It's Thanksgiving Day, and we've got a nationally televised game on our hands down at the Cotton Bowl between two rivals in the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers. For the Packers, this game basically meant their entire season, and that is not an understatement. They had no shot with 4 games to go of catching the 9-1 Minnesota Vikings for first place in the NFC Central. That race was done and dusted. But the wild card, which was created for the first time in NFL history under the merger, that was attainable, with an obvious caveat. Right now, the Packers found themselves at 5-5, with a slew of second and third place teams, including the Dallas Cowboys, having 6 wins. If they won this game and got to 6-5, then with 3 games left, they actually had a shot to make a run and get to the playoffs as a wild card. Lose this game, however, and your season is dead in the water. No 2 ways around it. All hands were on deck for this game against the Cowboys, which is what is going to make this injury all the more insane. Because as you might be able to tell from these highlights, the Packers' offense was really struggling on this day. By halftime, the game was tied at 3 apiece, so the Packers were right in this thing. But it definitely wasn't because of Bart Starr. I'll say that much. The Cowboys' defense was nothing short of remarkable toward the end of 1970, as they were about to embark on a 5-game stretch where their defense allowed just 8 points total with no offensive touchdowns allowed, and Starr was feeling the brunt of that doomsday defense pressure today. By the time the day ended, Starr was just 9 for 21, completing 42% of his passes for 83 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 4 sacks, meaning that he had just 51 net passing yards and a passer rating of 34.4, which is worse than if he did nothing but spiked the ball into the ground on every single play. You can see it clear as day. Starr was taking a ton of shots and was struggling out there to get any sort of offensive rhythm going. Heck, the Packers only finished the game with 129 total yards, which is obviously not going to get it done. And it's no real surprise that Starr was struggling, because he was clearly not at 100% and was clearly not healthy. By this point in the 1970 season, Starr was dealing with some well-documented knee issues, and he actually had to leave the last game, a 10-3 loss against the Minnesota Vikings, due to spraining or twisting his right knee on a tackle. He was relieved throughout the second half by Don Horn, and while the Packers thought that he'd be ready to go if need be for the Cowboys game, he clearly would not be at full strength. Now, we've seen quarterbacks play well when dealing with injuries on Thanksgiving. Look at Dallas Cowboys quarterback Craig Morton, who threw 3 touchdowns 1 year before in 1969 against the San Francisco 49ers while dealing with a separated shoulder on the holiday. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But Starr definitely did not qualify, especially since this knee injury was something that he had been nursing since a game against the Los Angeles Rams all the way back in October. Starr got the start, but it was very clear that he was not going to be all that effective, and that if the Packers were going to win this game, they were going to have to make a change at the quarterback position. Starr knew it, head coach Phil Bengtson knew it, everyone knew it, and that's why, at halftime, the switch was made. Enter this man right here, backup quarterback Don Horn. Now, in terms of backup quarterbacks, you can do a heck of a lot worse than Horn. In fact, dare I say it, Horn was one of the better backup quarterbacks in football, as you're watching with these highlights. Horn was drafted by the Packers in the first round of the 1967 NFL Draft to be the successor to Bart Starr. And while that never materialized, seeing as Starr was still playing great and was not relinquishing his job anytime soon, which would be the last time ever that the Packers prematurely drafted a quarterback in the first round, he was solid at times when called upon. Granted, I said at times, as he was still a backup quarterback for a reason. Over his last 6 games before this one, he had completed just 34% of his passes with 2 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a passer rating of 25.2. Which is, I don't even need to say it. It's very bad, I'll put it that way. However, you can't overlook the 1969 regular season finale against the St. Louis Cardinals, where he threw for 410 yards and 5 touchdowns. You can't overlook his performance in the 1968 regular season finale against a desperate Chicago Bears team when he came off the bench for an injured Bart Starr and threw 2 touchdowns in a victory with a passer rating of 142.4. You can't overlook the fact that earlier in the 1970 season, in a game against the Atlanta Falcons, he came off of the bench with the Packers trailing 24-20 and threw an 87-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter to Carroll Dale to stun the Falcons and win the game. Basically, if your season was on the line and you need to win this game, Don Horn is not the worst option available at your disposal should Bart Starr not be able to go. And heck, here's a preview from the game saying that Don Horn was expected to play, especially if Starr struggled in the first half, which he clearly did. So Horn was warming up on the sideline. He was getting ready for the second half, and he was getting ready to save Green Bay's season and try and help the Packers not just get back into the playoff picture, but become the first team to ever defeat the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. And that did not happen. And it wasn't because Horn played badly or anything like that. Again, that would be a complete and utter non-story. It was because Horn didn't even play, period. Because as Horn was warming up on the sidelines and stretching, just like everyone does, he blew out his knee. Seriously. He was just stretching, and just like that, his knee was gone. Said head coach Phil Bengtson, "It was the darndest thing I ever saw. He was just warming up, and his knee went out on him. They had a heck of a time getting it back in. It wasn't even in all the way," said Horn. "As soon as it goes back in, it will be all right. It's gone out before, but never for this long." Dr. Bruschi was working on it off and on throughout the whole second half. I'll try to get it back in when I get home. My wife, Barbara, should be able to do it. She's always had pretty good luck at it, which might be the craziest statement regarding an injury that I've ever seen. I can't even imagine what that conversation must have been like at Thanksgiving dinner that night when Horn arrived back in Green Bay. Hi, honey. Happy Thanksgiving. I missed you. Oh, by the way, can you pop my knee back into place? But because of that, the man that you're watching, Don Horn, the man who was supposed to save the Packers on this day as Starr was hurt, he was hurt even worse and couldn't play. Starr thought he was going to sit out the second half because he was in serious pain, and was more than fine, at least from everything it seemed like, to handing the reins over to Horn for the rest of the game. And then, Horn blows out his knee while stretching, completely throwing that plan out the window. So Starr has to go back out there. It's almost like at your job when you're super tired, and your shift is coming to an end, and you're packing up to get ready. And then, 1 minute before the restaurant closes, someone walks in and sits down. So you have to stay there for another hour and serve them. Because Don Horn, instead of being the man responsible for relieving Starr, basically needed to be relieved himself. As you might have been able to guess, this did not work out well for the Packers at all. Not in the slightest bit. Because when the final whistle sounded, Green Bay's season was just about over, as they got nothing going in the second half, scoring no more points as they lost 16-3 to drop to 5-6 on the season. The Cowboys nearly tripled Green Bay's total yardage, winning that battle 352-129. The Cowboys won the turnover margin. The Cowboys had double the rushing yards, and the Cowboys held the Packers to just 9 first downs on the day. So it's not too hard to see why the Packers were unable to win this one. And maybe things would have been different if Don Horn came into the game and was healthy and didn't just blow out his knee in a freak incident at halftime while stretching. But as it stood, the Packers season was done. What's crazy about this man right here is that this was his final moment as a Green Bay Packer. He would never play another game for the Packers after that 1970 season, as in 1971, he was traded to the Denver Broncos. You can learn more about his time with Denver by clicking the card in the upper right corner, because it was not that good, I'll put it that way. But still, in the game between these two teams behind me right here, this meant that Don Horn's final memory was blowing out his knee in the flukiest way possible. He didn't exactly end his Packer career on a bang, although his knee sure did. Like I said before, there are many quarterbacks that have been the hero on Thanksgiving and have come off the bench to do incredible things. And maybe Horn absolutely could have been that guy. Maybe he could have been a Thanksgiving legend. Maybe if Horn was able to play and didn't just randomly blow out his knee while stretching at halftime, he'd be able to do what guys like Clint Longley and Jason Garrett did. But when it came to this game right here, I guess we'll never know. I guess we're never going to know the true answer to that question. Because on this day in 1970, when it came to Don Horn, thanks to a bizarre fluke, Don Horn never got the opportunity to toot his own horn. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.